One of the errors, I think, that takes place in the contemporary church is we have no respect for the past. We have no respect for the traditions of the church. And so my goal in this short presentation is to help you redevelop that new appreciation. The creeds are productions of the church designed to protect the gospel, and they are designed to say clearly what we believe. So let me just start with some definitions if I can. A creed is a fixed formula summarizing the essential articles of the faith. So this won't get into areas of debate, areas of denominational distinctives, but it will say, it will set the boundaries for the faith. This is what Christians believe. And so if you disagree with the creed, then you have a debate with the church. You have a disagreement with the church. It was meant to be used by groups as a way of saying this together is what we believe, this together is what we'll stand with. So that's a creed. A confession is a lot longer document, and it is a more detailed inquiry. It ties theology to practical issues like faith and like prayer. I'm thinking in particular of the Westminster Confession. It's a wonderful teaching document. And so I would advise anybody to read it and understand it, because it is written by some of the best theologians that presented the ideas clearly and in ways that maybe you have not thought of before. So a confession can be incredibly beneficial in that area to help clear up some of the fogginess, some of the fuzziness that gets into our theology by stating succinctly and clearly what we believe. So a creed is that short fixed formula. A confession is a more detailed inquiry, the most famous being the Westminster Confession. And then we have the word catechism, and you may well be working through one of those now. Tim Keller's church just released the New City Catechism, but it's a summary of what we believe in question and answer form. So back in the day, your pastor might show up at your house and just start in asking questions, and you would present in return memorized answers to those questions, and it helped us to understand our faith. It was a great teaching tool. If you've been through classical education and you've seen the value of memorization, then this is answering to that for most of church history, having a catechism by which we might question those in the faith to see what they believe, and the answers were rote memory sort of answers. Again, that clear, succinct writing that we get in the confessions and in the catechism. So, of course, right next to the Westminster Confession, we also have the Westminster Catechism. And we all know the first question on that. What is the chief end of man? The chief end of man is to glorify God and to enjoy Him forever. See the catechism and how it works? And then we use the word councils, and this was when the church would call together church leaders from throughout the world to hammer out issues of theology and to answer heresy. So normally they got together in order to try to answer some heresy that was becoming more rampant in the church, and they wanted to put out a statement that would help people to understand truly what Christianity is. Now we don't have church councils as much anymore. There was a Vatican II for the Catholic Church. There are maybe some denominational councils like a Methodist council, but nothing along the lines like those early church councils. What we do have today, sometimes if we have a statement that is released by a group of scholars, again, to try to answer issues that are coming up in the church today. There is the Chicago Statement on Biblical Inerrancy, which tries to defend the doctrine of Scripture. There's the Chicago Statement on Hermeneutics, which is like the corollary to the one, if we have an inerrant document, then how do we interpret it? Then there's the Danvers Statement on Gender Roles. biblical Christian manhood and womanhood and how that would work out. And I'm sure that the center or the citizens, the Christians for Biblical Equality, probably have their own document as well. And then the one most recently is that Nashville statement dealing with issues of sexual identity. So those are the different kinds of ways in which the church has responded in trying to explain clearly what it is we believe to the culture and trying to answer heresy when that becomes necessary. Creeds, usually, the ones at least in our text that we're studying, focus on Christ. They have a two-pronged purpose. One is proactive, to say what we believe, what we hold in common. And then a reactive purpose, which is some heretical group has said this is what Christians really believe. So it comes as a response to heresy. So the proactive step is to define for us what Christians believe. The reactive one is to define for us why a heresy is truly heresy. So those are the creeds. The Apostles' Creed was a response to Docetism, which rather looked at Christ as a ghost. Gnosticism couldn't bear to think of the material world touching godness, and so they regarded Christ as simply an appearance of God, much like a ghost, not touched by human material things. The Nicene Creed, we've talked about that because of the issues with Athanasius, in which they were trying to respond to the problems of Arianism, which said Christ was a creature, that there was a time when he was not. And then there is the definition of Chalcedon, which finally and definitively described the nature of Christ as fully God and fully man, but never mixed, never confused together. So those are the major creeds that we were reading in our text. Someone might say, why should we study creeds? They cause division. Well, I've got to tell you, they also clear up the fuzziness of our culture, and they protect us from losing the salt that we are designed to work into the culture. If we don't have a good understanding of the gospel, then we may fail to guard the gospel. So one of the things that creeds help us to do is to understand clearly what the gospel is and hold on to it so that we receive it straight up from them and we are able to pass it straight up to the hands of the next generation. And as Paul will say, and then faithful men can teach it to others also. And so there is this passing of the baton from one generation to the next, and creeds help us to do that. So that's the benefit of a creed. And I'm hoping that our discussion then of creeds and catechisms and confessions and councils will help you to understand what price the church has paid in the past, so that you clearly have the gospel in your hands. Such a treasure, we have to be careful to protect it, to get it to the next generation.